right, welcome everyone. So good to see you all joining and logging on. Welcome. This is In Conversation with Torch Literary Arts. We will get started here in just a second, but please come on into the room, make yourselves comfortable. We will do a Q&A at the end, so there should be a Q&A tab at the bottom. Yes, I see it there. So as you're thinking of questions to ask later at the end of the In Conversation, please do add them to the Q&A. The chat won't be consistently monitored, so we don't want to miss any of your wonderful questions. All right. And with that, we'll go ahead and get into it. My name is Amanda Johnston, and I am the founder and executive director of Torch Literary Arts. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to Torch's In Conversation series with our special guest tonight, Jacqueline Glover. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our generous funders who fuel Torch's flame to make our mission possible to amplify Black women writers across the diaspora. The City of Austin, the Birding Johnson Foundation, the Texas Commission on the Arts, the Austin Community Foundation, the Poetry Foundation, the Literary Arts Fund, and individual donors. Torch Literary Arts is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we rely on the generosity of our community to fund our work. If you can support Torch, please consider making a donation or becoming a community impact member with a monthly contribution to receive member benefits. Your donation at any level will make a difference, and we will post the link to donate in the chat. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce tonight's guest. Jacqueline Glover is Executive Director of the Black Film Project at the Hutchins Center at Harvard, the newly created initiative by Henry Louis Gates Jr., designed to support filmmakers focusing on the Black experience. She is also executive producer of the new award-winning documentary, Natchez. Glover was formerly the head of documentaries for Disney's Onyx Collective, where she produced, developed, and acquired nonfiction projects, including the Oscar-winning documentary Summer of Soul. Other projects include Peabody Award winner and Emmy Award-nominated Aftershock, and Emmy Award winner, the 1619 Project. Glover's many projects have received numerous awards, including 10 Emmys and 5 Academy Awards. Glover holds a bachelor's in fine arts from NYU Tisch School of Arts and is a member of the documentary branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and the Producers Guild of America. Please welcome Jacqueline Glover.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And hello,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. Yes, yes. And we have a wonderful community here, our Torch community joining from all over the world. This will be recorded and available later for folks to enjoy. But let's go ahead and get into our conversation. So we are thrilled to be promotion partners with the Austin Film Society, and they are going to be showing Natchez this Juneteenth on Friday and on the 21st. So ahead of those screenings of Natchez, I wanted to have this great opportunity to hear from the executive producer about the film and talk about documentaries and filmmaking more broadly. But the description for the film, I will read that. It says Natchez, Mississippi, with its historic plantations, hoop-skirted docents, and garden clubs, it can feel like a step back into a lovely world for some, but for others, it's a painful reminder of the past. Caught between antebellum pageantry, showcasing the grand estates of the Old South and the legacy of the forks of the road slave market, the town finds itself at a crossroads between two American histories. So let's start there. In addition to that brief description, is there anything else you want to add for those who haven't seen Natchez yet about what the film is?
Yeah. So I think Natchez is really it's a look back, but it's also about our present and where we are. And I think a lot of people in this country seem to think that the past was a long time ago. And I think this film really, really shows how history affects us, and we are still living in a moment where history is affecting all of how we live and move in the world. So I think it's also about where we are right now, and it reminds us of the past not being that long ago, especially when it comes to slavery in this country.
Exactly. And then when you say this Mississippi, I mean, I'm thinking about Nina Simone, everybody knows about
Yes.
Mississippi, right? So just even saying the state, and for many of us, I didn't know about Natchez as a town before the documentary. And then to learn so much about its historical connection with the slave trade being a very prosperous center point for that horrific evil commerce as it was, and how it's still impacting the present day was incredible. And that's the power of storytelling and the incredible director and producer and your support as executive producer to make sure that it was available for and distributed to large audiences to see. Um, what drew you to this project? You have such an incredible, um, portfolio of work, but what about this project specifically do you think drew you to it? And why do you think it should be seen by a wider audience?
Yeah. So what brought me to the project, I was at a film festival, the Film Festival in Maine, and the director, who's an incredible director, Susanna Herbert, and her producing partner, Darcy McKinnon, were basically in the really early stages of the film. This was like 3 years ago, and they had about 5 minutes of material to show to various people at the festival. They were trying to sell the film and trying to get it out there, trying to actually raise money to make the film. And the 5 minutes that I saw were, you see the film. I know some people have not seen it already, but as you see just the beautiful cinematography, but also it really pulls you into kind of this storybook, but it feels like kind of a storybook, and it's like you're, in sort of this fantasy world, but then it slowly unfolds. And I think just the way they approached storytelling was very compelling to me. And so I actually had I was at Disney and I just left Disney. And so I was kind of out on my own and I wasn't really planning to get involved in any projects, but it really did draw me in. And I would also say just because it touched, my history. My father was from Charleston, South Carolina, and I had gone on one of these, antebellum home tours and was horrified at the time that I had done that. So this felt very familiar to me. And I thought it was an important story to tell. That's why I was drawn to it. So I came in early, and I said to the filmmakers, look, I'm not with Disney anymore. I'm not on the exec side anymore. But if there's anything I can do to help with this project, because it was, it just was so compelling to me. And so that's how I got involved. And I think just for the same reasons that I, said before, why it's important for as wide an audience. I think, just especially anyone who, is here in this country should absolutely know our history as Americans, right? This is American history. That it is a film that kind of pulls you in. It's easy to get sucked into it, whether you know the history or not. And it is, I think just in terms of the directing and the producing of the film, it's easy on the eye, if I can say that.
Mhm.
It gives you something that's entertaining in a way. There are funny moments in the film. There are beautiful homes. As I said before, there's this, things sort of reveal themselves later on, but you are drawn into this world because of, I think, the beautiful filmmaking that the team created.
You're absolutely right. I agree 100%. So while watching it, first of all, I've never been to, well, let's say, no, that's not true. I have been to a plantation, a former plantation, for the first time in the last 2 years. And it was actually in Jamaica.
Mhm.
And it was the Appleton Estate. So that was my first time. And being here in the United States, sadly, there's no short of opportunities to visit a former
Right.
plantation or go on those tours. And it's just something that it makes me physically ill. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't bring myself to do it. But being able to watch this film gave me the education and introductory anyway to these different sites in Natchez, different approaches to that storytelling at the different locations and the different tours. Come with the perspective and lens of the folks who are guiding the tours, right?
That's
And what they are going to share, the tone they are going to set, and it can, polar opposites at moments, right? Of like, we're sharing American history, the good and the bad, because we're all stronger when we know our history. And then other moments are saying we get to pick and choose. I think that was one point there was someone visiting and taking one of the tours was like, I get to pick the parts I want to remember. And with so many bad things, why would you want to remember that? And there were folks who would cater to that because it's still a business and an industry. So the film itself gave an opportunity for folks like me who might not ever,
yeah.
wish to go to a location to still know the history. And there was something really with the beautiful cinematography and the way that the documentary was shot and edited and shared. It's almost seductive with the gowns and the grandeur. And so I think it's a really great opportunity for folks who might be inclined to pick that,
Yes.
right? And to say, I want to see that. And then also get the additional education and experiences from the diverse community that lives in Natchez and the different tours that happen there. Well
Yeah.
done. Excellent.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And I think, as we just discussed, the cinematography by Noah Collier and the editing by Pablo Parenza really lend itself to inviting you in something that, right, some people may be like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to know, or I don't want to see someone maybe celebrating this history.
Right.
Um, hopefully you watch it and you realize what this film is. But someone might have that preconceived idea that, oh, this is about antebellum home tours. I'm not interested. But we also do have, Susanna and Darcy found an amazing participant in the film named Tracy, who's a guide. He's an African American man, and he really gives you the truth and is a through line throughout the film that I think can help gives everyone the knowledge and so you can balance and what you're hearing on one end might not be correct, but at least there's somebody there that is paying attention to what the story is and what the truth is.
Right. And a historian, everything based in history. He was telling the truth, and I think that's what great documentaries do. They share truths and they share the story for the audience then to take away all of that information, not to have it, where it's sliced and have truths with agendas attached to them. But no, this is what it is. This is what the reality is today. And now you can make an informed conclusion for yourself about what that means to you, what you learned, and how you move forward with that knowledge. And again, great documentaries educate and inform viewers, right? Through powerful storytelling. What did you learn from
Yeah.
Natchez?
Yeah. Oh boy, what did I learn? I think one of the things that I've learned was that y you do get people who may not know, something, but then they become informed and they can actually change. I think sometimes, we all are set in our ways, or we believe certain people think certain ways, and that can't be changed. And I think this film shows that people can evolve, if given a chance. Not everybody, but I feel that, you do get to witness some change in people's ideas, and more than one person in the film.
Mhm. That was definitely apparent in the people in the film who were taking the tours. And you saw, again, different experiences depending on how it was curated for them. But there were definitely tours, and with the Rev tours there, Terry, you saw it captured in real time, him creating a space for education to happen, for history to be shared and education to happen, and a place where those predominantly white tourists who were taking the tours felt safe to ask questions.
Right.
Right. And so that's something we do have to have. If we're going to be able to move forward, we have to have a place where we can discuss things without judgment, so that we can share and accept truths that we didn't know before. So, I learned in watching Natchez that Natchez had the first openly gay Black mayor in Mississippi. That
That's
was
right.
something that was new to me, and then to know that in the context of this film
Yeah.
and the history, wow, yes, with opportunity to learn and change, right? And that we contain multitudes, so
That's
many
right.
things can exist at the same time. Also, conflicting opinions, how some oppressed groups were then also still being oppressive
Yeah.
and not wanting to extend equality or see each other as equals in the same existence, the same life, which was fascinating, but we know is true, right?
Yeah.
So, your projects have received the highest honors, literally, and been distributed internationally. What do you look for in a documentary or in any other film or project when you are considering new projects to support?
Yeah. I think one of the things I look for are strong characters within a film. I think Natchez is a great example of that, because all of the folks in Natchez were amazing people in
Mhm.
their storytelling, and just their presence on screen. So I think having really strong presence on screen is important. And I think that a strong project does many things. It's not just one storyline. It's got layers to it, and I'm always looking for those layers in a story. As you said, multitudes. I think a documentary especially can give you so many things, and I'm always looking for more than one piece, or more than one layer to the story. And I think, a strong film is something that is something that gets to a truth. I think people can, as you mentioned, and even in terms of like thinking about Natchez and how, each person gives a tour and you're going to get different things from all of those different tours. I think that's true for film. You're going to get a perspective, depending on who the documentary filmmaker is and how they're telling that story. But they're trying to, with documentary, you're getting to some truth that really gets to the core of who we are as human beings. And I'm always drawn to that, where someone is trying to really just to get to that kernel of truth, that says something, that reflects something back to us and makes us think about who we are and how we move in the world.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So for documentaries now, at Torch, we support screenwriters, filmmakers who work across the art form. But in documentary film, the text and lines is coming from the people, the interviews, it may be some narration, to make a cohesive storytelling, cohesive story. But for those who are watching and are working on scripts or other, alternative ways of storytelling in film, both for screen and television, what would be a nugget of advice to glean that rich conversation or feedback from the people in the film when we're not writing dialogue for them?
Right. So you mean in terms of a script for a narrative film, or
Right. No, no.
yeah,
I mean, if someone, if they are taking on a project who maybe they've been writing screenplays and now they're going to do something like a documentary, as interview based, like
mhm.
they're not writing
Yep,
and they can't predict what's going to come out of those folks' mouths.
exactly.
So, but they do control the questions and the
Yeah,
setting. So
yeah.
what advice would you have for them, for someone who is constructing the story that way?
Yeah, got it. So, right, you are not creating what people say, and so you have to be very flexible and let them talk, and you are going to make something out of what they say later on, right? So it's really getting as much material as possible, having, if you're going to do a sit down interview, getting as much material as possible from them, asking as many questions as you can. I think one of the things as well is that that probably in the beginning there's going to be a little nervousness, and you're probably going to want to have that conversation flow for a little while so that it can get comfortable. And then what you're going to do is you take that interview, but it really, for documentary, I think a good portion of that filming is once you're in the editing room, and then that's where the story is really created and gets formed. So you have your sort of blueprint of the interview, but almost like the craft of writing, it's in the edit that the story then gets really created based on the interview that you do. But correct, like you can't tell them what to say. But if you're interviewing and you have an idea of the kinds of things that you want to focus on, then you have to make sure that those questions are going to gear toward that direction. If you have a focus of the film and you're wanting to be very specific about that, you have to just make sure that those questions are going to be very pointed to whatever the topic is you're looking for from them. But right, you're not creating any of it. It's really coming from the person you're talking to.
Mhm. Awesome. I want to remind the viewers, please, if you have any questions, do populate that Q&A at the bottom of the screen. We will have at least 20 minutes at the end of our hour to include some of those. So we want to hear from you. Add your questions to the Q&A. My next question for you, Jackie, is with shifting political priorities and the pulling back from diversity, equity, and inclusion across education and industry, are you seeing new challenges to making films that capture the Black experience?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I left Disney about, gosh, it's like 4 years now, and or 3 years, and I haven't been really in it to see what's happened so far. I do know that there's been contraction, right? Just generally across the board. I think all of film, and the filmmakers in the process of trying to sell their work, trying to get it out there, it's been difficult just across the board. But I couldn't say specifically that, because of the cuts of DEI and because of, the administration now, that that is affecting directly Black stories. but certainly across the board, in film, documentary, narrative, all of it, there have been great challenges. Where I sit right now, is being able to support filmmakers who have stories to tell about the Black experience. So I feel very grateful to be in a position where we can make sure that stories that are very important to us about the Black experience can be nurtured, and filmmakers who have those stories can set out to start making them. So, that's sort of where I sit now. So I'm not seeing it as much on the other side of the industry, but where I sit, I'm happy to say that I'm seeing a lot of folks pursuing projects and figuring out how to get them made.
That's fantastic. So maybe you can share a little bit more about the program for
Yeah.
those who might be looking for a new opportunity. Please share about the work you do at Harvard.
Yes, absolutely. So last fall was the first year of the fellowship. It's called the Black Film Project, and at Harvard at the Hutchins Center. And it is focusing on narrative or documentary filmmakers who they have to have made a film before. It's not for novices. It can be established filmmakers or emerging filmmakers, but you have to have made a film. And basically, there is opportunity to be at Harvard for 9 months for the school year, starting in September, finishing up in May. The fellows get an office, they get a pretty hefty stipend. They get access to all the things that a student at Harvard would have access to, meaning libraries and all the things that while on a campus, and research, archives, all things like that. And then I'm working really closely with the Film Study Center at Harvard. So there's a community of filmmakers to be involved with as well. But the Hutchins Center at Harvard is a center that focuses on African and African American research. And we are taking 3 film fellows, but there are other fellows that are part of the cohort. They're W.E.B. Du Bois fellows. And so the 3 filmmakers that I'm overseeing will be in a larger cohort of fellows that are focusing on writing, or their postdocs, or they're finishing their PhDs. So there's a really interesting mix of people outside of just the filmmakers. And I'm the executive director of it, and I'm really excited that it's up and running.
That's fantastic. I love when there's multi-genre, multimedia cohorts for incredible collaborations can happen. And
Yeah.
I imagine there is a very rich archive there as well that they will have access to.
Yes. Yes. No, no. The synergies and collaboration is part of the excitement for me, because it really is bringing filmmakers into an environment that they maybe don't have access to or opportunity to be part of. And I saw it even last with our very first cohort. Was one of our filmmakers was looking for someone who could compose music or be a music supervisor. And one of the other W.E.B. Du Bois fellows is a musicologist and is finishing her PhD. And she was interested in film. So it was like a wonderful collaboration. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you all heard that.
Yeah.
Spread the word about this program. Thank
Yeah, yeah.
you.
So there's the application will open. It's think probably December 1st or right around December, early December, and closes February 26th or 7th, something like that. And there's an application if you just go to Harvard Hutchins Center website, you will find it.
Fantastic. We'll be sure to share that. And when it's time to submit those applications, we'll send it out through our channels. We love making sure our community knows about these great opportunities. And you've done so many projects. I mean, we heard just a few in that introduction with, in addition to Natchez, where Summer of Soul, 1619 project, and so many others. I know this is going to be a hard question, but of all your projects, which one do you feel made the biggest impact?
Oh boy. That is really almost impossible to answer. Really impossible to answer. I would say that I can't answer that question, but I can talk about one project that's coming to mind that made a huge impact on me because it was one of my first projects that I got to work on as a producer when I was at HBO as an executive. And it was Four Little Girls with Spike Lee.
Mm,
And
mhm,
it was incredibly impactful for me, just in terms of my career and really getting to spend the time on something that was so important. Also, once again, talking about history, the documentary is about the 1963 church bombing where four little
mhm,
girls were killed in Alabama, in Birmingham. And
mhm,
it went on to have amazing success as a film, but I also got to meet the families of the little girls.
mm,
They were, I just can't describe how special it was to meet them and to be part of helping tell their story.
mhm,
And not only, was it an important film for just history, for American history, but after the film came out, one of the men who was involved in that bombing was arrested. And,
mm,
he had gone for years sort of bragging about what had happened. And nobody, he was sort of untouchable. But I mean, I don't know if it's related, but certainly this is something that happened afterward. So there were many parts to this film. It was nominated for an Oscar. I mean, there were many parts to this film that, Spike Lee, Sam Pollard, Daphne McWilliams, all the people that were involved in this film, made it a really special project for me to be a part of.
yeah.
It's not the only film though that like once again, there's so many. Yeah.
I know that's an impossible question, but I had to ask it. And I think that's a great example what it does for you as a filmmaker, as for your career, right, and being part of the industry, but for the larger consciousness of the community to know that this happened, because that's the thing. You have to keep telling history. You
That's
can't
right.
share it one time and think it sticks. Like it has to constantly be retold and shared, because many people still don't know about that church bombing, about the four little girls. And then there are people who know about that and don't know that church bombings continued. That was not the first nor the last. And in recent years, there was a series, even of church bombings and fires that happened. So we have to continually tell the truth and tell history, and hopefully justice, doesn't have an expiration date, and it can always continue to do the important work that it needs to do of bringing other folks in so that we can, work towards those justices that remain to be seen. With that, it's a great segue to my next question. So, with so many stories that haven't been told, what do you see, or do you see any pressing stories that need to be told now that
Yeah.
haven't been captured yet?
Yeah. So I think that's a hard question too. There are so many stories. I feel, I'm at Harvard now and there's colloquiums that happen every Wednesday at the Hutchins Center, given by people who are doing their research on projects and talking about their project. I feel like every week there's a story that I'm hearing, anywhere I go, reading a book, talking to people. There are just infinite numbers of stories that need to still be told. So it's really hard to say, I don't have one thing on my list. I think that opportunities come to me because, it's not, there's one thing to have the idea. There's another thing to have like all the other pieces to, making something, be a film. And so I always kind of look for all those other pieces to fall in place for something to be right. But it's like when something does present itself to me, for example, like the Natchez project, and I think this absolutely has to be told. So I kind of wait and see, what's kind of in front of me when it comes to like filmmakers. But I'm always hearing great ideas for things, and hard to say that's the one. You kind of feel it. You feel it when you see it. At least for me, I do.
I get it. I would say for the audience who's watching, and listening, if anything, share your story.
That's right.
There's with there being so many, um, then don't ever. What frustrates me, as a writer and an artist, when I'll see someone that say, "Oh, I can't write about that thing because so and so did it." Well, there are many, many layers to a story, and you, as an artist, as a writer, as a filmmaker, you have your own lens to share the story through. So make it, don't ever hesitate in sharing your story, because also with you sharing it, now it has access to maybe a different group of people who didn't know about that story before, right? So share your
Yeah.
story. There's
Yeah.
always an opportunity to share your story, and incredible people like Jacqueline Glover can't get behind it and amplify it if you're not doing the work to start and make and share a great story. Uh, I want to say, okay, we're coming to the end of my questions. So again, if you have questions, this is the time to ask them. Do drop them in the Q&A. But what advice do you have for emerging documentary filmmakers?
Yeah. Well, I think what you just said was perfect in terms of just starting. These days, especially, if you're wanting to make documentary film, um, I think, just even the idea of having your phone, right? Like everybody has a camera now, and you
Mhm.
can just start and see if it makes, see if it feels right in telling. But if you have something you really want to make, start, just do it. Don't wait. If it means uh finding someone with a camera, hiring someone with a camera and just going and just doing that first interview, getting a little bit of footage to put together as a reel, as a proof of concept is probably a good way to start. And then maybe looking for some sort of funding. Sometimes there's if you have something to show, whether it's a 3-minute piece, a 5-minute piece, have some sort of proof of concept. And then if it's a certain topic, there may be organizations that are willing to help, or various documentary organizations. Go online, Google, look for documentary funding, and there are all kinds of places that can help. In early. In starting up a project on the early side, it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but I think that the first thing is just identifying what that story is, and getting start shooting, start filming.
Great advice, and I will do a soft plug for our friends at Austin Film Society. They have great programs. So if you're here in Austin and Central Texas, look into Austin Film Society. They have a lot of free or really affordable programs. If you're looking to take a course, like if you're very, very emerging, you're wanting to take a course, then they have funding to help you get your project or proof of concept shot. and ready to share. And then they also have equipment. I had the opportunity to go and tour the Austin Public Facility, and I am no filmmaker, but when I talk to filmmakers and I tell them they have red cameras available to check out like a library, filmmakers get very excited. So they have all of the great cameras and equipment you need. So, but like you said, you can pick up your phone. If you have a story to tell, if you have the drive, then just get started making something, and go from there. And so going from there, the last question I have before we open up for the Q&A, if you can share, are there any projects you're working on now that you're excited about?
Um, so the last project that's on my roster right now is a documentary. It's not out yet, but it's a documentary about the relationship between America and Japan and baseball, and the history
Mm.
of baseball, which goes back to the 1800s. So it's an interesting project. Yes, it's called Diamond Diplomacy.
Diamond diplomacy. All right, y'all heard it here first. We're going to keep an
Yes.
eye out for that project. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And we'll go to the Q&A. I see we've got a couple in here. The first one, again, is just asking when all the pieces are in place, the project is made, what does the filmmaker still need to demonstrate so that you would potentially make a yes? And we talked about having a great story, having great characters. Is there anything else you would add to that list that would make it a very compelling project to get behind?
Yeah. So to make it a yes, I think, that depends on where you're trying to sell it or who you're trying to get behind the project. Because I was at HBO for many years, and then I was at Disney, and we may be looking for different things, right? Different places that you're going to go to try to sell your film are looking for different things. So that's also, I think, is distribution is a huge piece of once your film is done, where's it going to go? Are you going to try to get it in theaters? That means you need a theatrical distributor. Are you going to try to sell it to a streamer like HBO or Netflix or Disney? And if you are thinking about that, then the question is, what are, understand who they are, who the distributor is that you're going to for that. Yes, right. Like understand what they do, what their roster is, what their programming looks like, because it doesn't make sense to go somewhere to sort of try to sell a project or get a project on a certain platform if it's not a right fit. So you're not going to get the yes because it's just never been the right fit from the beginning. So I think that's also just sort of figuring out, I have this film, who's it right for? Who is this film? Who do you want to see this film? Who's your audience for this film? And I think that that's another thing that you have to be aware of as you're making the project or as it's finished and you have your film, who's it for? And then you have to try to figure out, making, making the best placement for it. But that's part of getting the yes is putting it in a place that's going to make sense for the film.
Thank you. We've got another question here, and I hope I'm summarizing this correctly, but I think it's around like you're with the Academy. And so, being in those rooms where decisions about awards and recognition are being made, is there a certain style of film that is more favorable? And the example they gave were ones that have, say, Spike Lee attached to it, like Four Little Girls, or something like Chirac, that
Mhm.
is, you know,
Yeah.
just a different offering. So is that something that folks should be considering when they're trying to reach a broader audience, is style?
Yeah. I would say for style, the first thing, no matter what, quality of the filmmaking in terms of like what, not shaky camera, not blurry, like literally all those things that most people, when you don't even think about it because you're not seeing the problems, right? So that's the first thing, is just the quality of the filmmaking, which means, having it shot well, having it edited well, is really important, especially if you're thinking about like in terms of awards. Um, you know, kind of things come in and out of style in terms of like, I mean, everybody knows now when you're watching television or if you're watching documentaries on TV now, the thing that's popular is true crime, celebrity documentaries, and sports. So those right now seem to be the dominant genres that people are focusing on. But when it comes to, I think you were asking also just in terms of like, say, the Academy, like, are we talking about Oscars or Emmys? But I think in those spaces, say the Oscars, I mean, I think you don't necessarily, especially in the documentary category, they don't necessarily need to be the most popular types of filmmaking. There maybe has to be something interesting about that film that people have not seen before. So I would say many times the documentaries that people seem to be drawn to are really kind of innovative and interesting because we haven't seen anything like it before. So I would say for in terms of the Oscars and the Academy Awards, and also really important subject matter, things that really matter in the world, tend to be films that people focus on. And in the Emmys, I think it might be more in the documentary categories, it might be more things that are, sort of popular, but also really well done. So those are kind of the broad strokes, but hard to say specifics. But I think those are kind of broad.
Yeah, is it still going to end up being subjective? How can it not be,
Right.
depending on the year, what is happening in the world, and who is in the seats, you know. So, to come back to the example there, Spike Lee, I think he's a great example of someone, you have a vision and a style and you stay true to it. So like we all know that famous Spike Lee motion, that is
Yes,
in all of his films, and then it becomes a signature,
that's
right? So, I recently watched I love Boosters, and Boost Riley's,
right.
if you know his films, you know his films. So, create your own path too, and don't be afraid of that. And that can be what is unique in the storytelling that might find a broader audience.
Yeah.
And there's one more question in the Q&A, and it goes back to Natchez. So we're circling back to the
Yeah.
film at hand. And again, don't forget, Natchez is going to be showing Austin Film Society at the cinema on Juneteenth. Great film to see on Juneteenth. Go on Friday, and then again on the 21st. But this question, again, I hope I'm summarizing it well here, but it's around the transformation that happened for visitors who were having these encounters with the past, and then how that was shaped by the ideological context of the historical storytelling. So the tour guides. Was there any information, anecdotally or documented, for the change that folks experienced, or a transformation that happened after going on the tour and after experiencing that?
Yeah. So one of the participants in the film, who works with one of the homes, or works, her name is Tracy. I would say that she absolutely transforms in the film, and I got to meet her at one of the screenings that we had, and she came up to me and talked a lot about how she hadn't really thought about a lot of things until she watched the film, um, and had met the Rev, the other tour guide, one of the tour guides in the film. And it really had a profound effect on her. She, talked to me about that.
I think that's possibly even a fear, right? That some folks might have in making a documentary or something that is sharing someone's truth, their experience, right? Is in what is the after effect? And so I guess that would be my last question: is how do you, or do you have any thoughts around care or trauma when making a piece like this for once the cameras then turn off and we've left, and these very real people are going to see this and live in the same town. Is there any consideration for that in the making of the film?
Yeah. I think generally that is absolutely a consideration now. It didn't used to be in as much as it is now, about really thinking about what happens after a film or even during a film. Just overall, that is a piece of filmmaking now that, it's part of the process is to, make sure people are okay. I would say also, and I know it's true in this experience, and I think just generally it's true for documentary filmmakers for the most part, is that you build a relationship with the people in your film, and that doesn't end when the cameras are put down and when the film is premiering. That relationship continues, and I've seen it throughout my career where you stay in touch with the people in your film. They become part of your larger film family. I mean, I know that was true with Four Little Girls, staying in touch with some of the parents in that film. And so, it as a filmmaker, I mean, as a documentary filmmaker, I think that's part of the that's part of the documentary process, is that if you are going to be engaging with people and they're in your film, then they become, in your life. That's part of the process.
Yeah, you expect folks to be vulnerable, you be vulnerable with them,
That's
and
right.
you create a new connection. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. I see one more question here. So, where else can we see the film Natchez outside of Austin Film Fest? It is streaming, so you can check your streaming sources. I know it is streaming and available, so I encourage you all to go and see Natchez along with these other incredible documentaries, and keep creating, keep sharing incredible stories like the ones that we are tonight. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for
Well,
being with us for Torches in Conversation series. It was a pleasure being in conversation with you and hearing from you. Thank you, everyone who attended, and thank you for those who shared questions. We did post in the chat. I hope you can all see that there. We have the link. If you can donate, again, Torch is a 501c3 nonprofit, and the generosity of our community and donors helps us continue doing this good work. So if you can make a donation, please consider doing so. And there's a link to our upcoming events there at torchliteraryarts.org. We'd love to see you at other virtual and in-person events. And of course, a survey. I promise it's brief, not long at all, but those surveys are so helpful for us to review our programs, make sure we're delivering quality programs, and to share with our funders so that they can hear from you about how you enjoyed, experienced, or had suggestions for what we can do next time here at Torch. But that is all for our program this evening. Thank you so much again, Jacqueline. It was a pleasure. Thank you all for attending. We will have this recording available soon on our YouTube channel, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
thank you. Bye-bye.